Do you like to applique? I'll admit it's not one of my primary techniques, but I was so inspired by my next guest. I hope you are too. Let's get to know Sally Manke. Tell us about how you got started with quilting.
I started sewing at the knee of my great aunt when I was about 5 years old. She was a tailor, retired. She was like our grandmother, and she allowed me to sew on her little featherweight with the foot pedal in my lap because I couldn't reach the floor. And I've been sewing ever since.
That's awesome. What wonderful memories.
Yeah, yeah.
So then when
And
did you transition to quilting?
retired from teaching, went into a second career. When I retired from that position, fiber art just seemed like a perfect combination of my two loves, and I had time to actually do them.
Yes, finding that time is wonderful. So do you work independently? Are you a member of guilds and art quilt groups, or how does that look in your life?
I am a member of a local guild. I, of course, am a member of AQS, American Quilters Society, and teach for them. I have, had a membership before IQA dissolved. And so I'm involved in those kinds of things, but I also love the solitary studio work.
As artists, we like to kind of keep ourselves in a bubble, protect our creative babies from that harsh light of day sometimes
Yeah,
until they're ready
yeah.
for the world.
And
Great.
that kind of sort of leads to where I became a pattern designer,
Mhm.
which was never my intent. I loved teaching and I do a lot of art quilt teaching.
Mhm.
Um, but I never ever wanted to be a maker of patterns, design them, make them myself, fine. So I had this orphan block and I made this whimsical bicycle with flowers and things.
Mhm.
And it sort of blew up on book. And I kept getting requests for purchasing the pattern. And I was like, no, I don't do patterns because I envisioned all these people saying, she wrote this wrong, she used bad grammar, she didn't take good pictures or whatever. And and I was selling them finished in my Etsy shop.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, why would I want everyone else making them? And I had so many requests. And then people sort of started borrowing my idea to create their own. And I thought, somebody is going to make a pattern with my design and idea.
Mhm.
And so I became a pattern designer and I figured it all out on my own with a local quilt print shop.
Mhm.
Printed the pattern, ordered 50 of them, put them on my Etsy site, and sold out of 50 patterns in the first hour and 30 minutes. So then I've just kind of also been a pattern designer.
Yeah, it sounds like you fell into that, very serendipitous. So tell us
Yeah,
about your style. I think I have seen that bicycle and floral design, and I'm loving the windmill floral quilt you have behind you.
yeah. I kind of got started on this Dresden thing because I
Uh,
did the bicycle and then I did what I call a penny farthing, which is the old-fashioned bicycle with the giant wheel in the
mhm.
front and the one. And so I made a pattern for that. And then I thought, well, there's more you can do with a Dresden than that. And I was teaching in Grand Island, Nebraska. And my husband and I kind of take adventures when I go off to teach somewhere. And we were driving through Minnesota and there were all these wonderful windmills. And he's seeing windmills and I'm seeing Dresden plate. And so I came home from there and did a Dresden windmill with this is
Mhm.
called Blooming Windmill. It's kind of got some flowers and a
Okay.
pump and some things down. And so that was like my third pattern. And I've just kind of gone from there.
It's beautiful, beautiful. Um, Tell us about your preferred quilt size. I know some people are making bed quilts, and if um, are your art quilts more just wall hangings? Tell us about those sizes.
Yeah, almost every quilt that I do is a wall size quilt. that could be like a commission quilt. I had done a very small pine tree quilt, and I had a lady contact me and she said, I want that, but it needs to be a horizontal. And the one that she was talking about was maybe 20 by 30. And she wanted this more like 50 wide. It was had to fit a particular spot in her home. And she invited me to her home and we looked at it and came up with a size. And so it just, that one became much larger, but with more pine trees in it. So most of my quilts are, I'm going to say, are under 40 or 50 inches in the largest direction.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about some of those super small projects. How small do you quilt?
I sometimes do just teeny tiny ones. When I was learning how to couch sari silk on my long arm, I did some like 6-inch ones just because I was just, 6 by 6 inches. But when I teach confetti quilting, which is a popular class, they are often maybe 12 by 9 or 10. And then if folks want them to stand out more, they can always add borders that reflect some of the colors in the quilt to make it fit so that it fits on their wall in their decor.
Yeah, there's so many ways to personalize quilt designs. Like you said, borders are one of my favorite things to play with to really make the quilt fit the use that I have in mind for it. So great tip. I'm still fascinated by your techniques. Are you doing like Broderie Perse to embroider, or what embellishments are you putting on the quilts after you get the piecing done?
The Dresden line, which encompassed the penny farthing, the whimsical bicycle, the blooming windmill, those have when I write up the class for that, it's actually a 2-day class because there's so many techniques. So the actual Dresden in here, this is like the rest of the Dresden. That's this one is actually a turned edge applique because the end of the Dresden is a turned edge. So that's applied there. The bicycle frames and the windmill are all made with bias tape makers. And I use a bonding tape on the back of those. So those become, bonded applique. And then the poles, the fence poles down here are raw edge applique. Misty Fuse is like my favorite bonding agent because it stitches through so well. But all of the flowers are embroidery Perse. They're just Misty Fuse on the back of a fabric. And, it's what you do at night when you're watching TV and cut out or on a road trip. If someone else is driving and you're just sitting, you can trim out. And I have just bags of flowers that I've just cut, or vines to cut those out. In fact, I often get a phone call from people who get the pattern and they say, well, where's the pattern for the flowers? Like, it's your design. And they're like, no, but I want your flowers. And I said, but you get to make this bicycle your own. You can have puppies coming out of those baskets if you choose. It's whatever you find on your fabric.
Oh yeah, that would be wonderful. So when you're incorporating all these elements, how are you managing your stash? Give us some tips for that so that you have that rich palette to play with.
That's exactly what it is a palette. And I have stash after stash after stash. I'm an Island Boutique ambassador. And so that stash I keep completely separated from any other fabrics that I have, because when I do a project for Island Boutique, it needs to be all Island Boutique. But I do snitch out of my Island Boutique stash for lots of other projects. Closet that is filled with just cubes, and I have them by color in these 12 by 12 cubes, folded, big pieces on the right, smaller pieces on the left. And then I have another area where I have more cubes, and those are prints and solids. And then I have stashes in tubs under beds. Like, I have this huge stash collection of stripes.
Mhm.
I love to use stripes either straight or for bindings. And I live in a really remote area and I love my local quilt shops, but really the closest one is an hour away.
Mhm.
So when you're on that edge and you just want to finish, you can pull those out and say, oh yeah, I do have 75 here that I could choose from to make a striped binding on this edge.
Great, how fun. Um, Tell us about your quilting bucket list. What other techniques and things are you anxious to explore?
Well, because consider myself a fiber artist, I do quilts with lots of mixed media in them. And so I'm a huge intense ink
Mm.
user, and I have both the pencils and the blocks. And so I use those a lot. Love using them when I'm thread painting because I can start, I can use those. To get an image on just a piece of batik that I want to work on. But there are also Inktense paints, which are like watercolors, which is a little different technique. And the finished product comes out so much more. So I've kind of got those on my list on my order sheet that I'd like to pick up. I also love doing couching
Mhm.
to add like texture and variety to it. And the thing that I'm working a lot with right now is either choosing something that's already printed or creating something with Inktense on fabric, padding it with the thin more, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, the real thin Hobbs batting. I'm sure it's thin more, close to that. And then quilting that, then cutting it out and quilting it on a surface. So that's a class I'm writing right now. So, and every time I come up with it, I'm working on 2 new classes right now that'll be in my repertoire of things to offer. And you have to keep making it and trying everything so that when you get in front of a classroom,
Mhm.
you have it down and you can say, oh yeah, that happened to me and we could fix that by doing this.
Since you are a teacher and have had lots of opportunity to travel, what are some of your favorite places to go and quilt away from home?
There are so many places. Like I said, my husband and I have used that. We're both retired, and so we've used the quilting travel as an opportunity. I was going to Grand Island, Nebraska, so we drove from up by Sleeping Bear on the shore of Lake Michigan in our home to Chicago, picked up a Cruise America, and did all of the Black Hills and Mount Rushmore and
Mhm.
Custer State Park, and even the I think it's Autohenge, which was just this really odd place. And then we circled back around to be in Nebraska to teach. And so we've had lots of opportunities. I did New Bern, North Carolina, where I was so afraid I was going to be canceled because the fall before I was to teach there in the spring, they had this huge hurricane and we kept watching them on the national news, and I didn't want to contact guild people because I thought they're bailing water out of the so I waited until like Christmas time and they said, oh no, we're going to be able, we, changed. And so I went there and that gave us an opportunity to do the national park island where the wild horses are and find shells to bring back to grandkids, and did Athens and Atlanta, Georgia in another Cruise America RV,
Mhm.
got iced in just outside of Savannah. And, I'm from Michigan. We could
Yeah.
have driven on those roads, but no, they closed their Walmart
Oh my
because,
goodness.
because they had a quarter of an inch of ice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So we've had some adventures out on the teaching
On the
circuit.
teaching. Yeah, that does. That sounds like a lot of fun. So hopefully this pandemic stuff will end soon and we can all get back
Exactly.
together.
Hoping for that person like from, Norway or Australia to say, "Oh, come."
Yeah, that will be wonderful. What is your shopping strategy when you do make that hour-long trek to the store? What are you looking for? Florals, certain colors to fill in your stash?
I love color and I love texture. Now, when I'm doing any of the floral things, but I have this huge stash. I like to say the one that wins with the most, has the most. When they dye wins.
Mhm.
But I much prefer saying that I can't dye till I get all this sewn up. And I think right now I'd have to be like 150. It's not that I need a lot of anything as I venture out, but I always look for something unique. I'm working on a lot of things from our local preserve where I'm very involved at the marsh and the dune trails. And I'm always working on quilts from that I've used that for inspiration. And so it might be the color of a frog or the background that you might find on a sand dune.
Tell us about the favorite quilt you've ever made. Is it the bicycle one? What?
I ask that often, and I have to say it's whatever I'm working on right now. And I also have a lot of people who say, "How?" Because I sell quilts on Etsy.
Mhm.
How can you part with these? And it's like, seriously, if I kept all of these, I could line the walls of our home with them, and I'd have to cover every window and ceiling, and it's like I enjoy a new experience, and I love it when I had a beautiful farm one that had pumpkins on a wagon and probably 7 different techniques in it. And a gentleman bought it as an anniversary gift for his wife, and they had both had a family history of farming in Ohio. And he sent me a picture of it on the dining room wall, and it was like, that just makes me happy. I love sharing those things. For a long time, I loved this hollyhock one that I had taken a photo in France of an old door with crusty paint. And a lady put it in her studio in California. And she even sent me swatches of paint on what to paint the wall to hang it on. I really felt involved with that. So.
That sounds fabulous. So it sounds like you get your inspiration from from the natural world, just these interesting places.
I think that sums it up very much. I love being outdoors. A lot of people, when you live in Michigan, complain about the cold or the gloomy skies, but I really maintain that even if it's not sunny, if you get outside every day, your whole mood just enhances, and then you can keep doing what you enjoy.
What is your best advice for beginner quilters or quilters that are new to this whole kind of art quilt experience?
Not to limit themselves and call themselves a beginner, just to try it. There are so many wonderful teachers out there that can make it easy for you to learn. And just think back, I have a grandson who's a kindergartner, and he is learning so much, and as the year progresses. And he was a kid who wasn't allowed any screen time growing up and had to be a virtual learner the first 2 weeks of school, and he adapted to it. And I think that's a trait of all human beings, not just kindergartners. So just give it a try. Be open to anything new. My mantra is we're all lifelong learners. We don't stop when we get out of school.
True. That really helps and makes life more interesting, because there is so much out there, new experiences that we get to have. Thank you so much for your time today, Sally, and we will look for more wonderful work from you.
Thanks so much, Andy, for having me.
It was wonderful getting to know Sally. If you'd like to meet more of my quilting friends, watch this video next. And if you're ready to dive into a quilt project, try one of my jelly roll suggestions. I'll see you in the next video. Happy quilting!